Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Allan Buckmann. I was a meteorologist in the United States Air Force 60 to 64. I then went to work for the Department of Fish and Game and was a wildlife biologist with them for 38 years. I retired 4 years ago. I've been researching all of these items for quite a long time. I'd like to take you on a little trip, and it's kind of my discovery trip about what's been going on in the environment. Now, as a wildlife biologist with the Department of Fish and Game, I had a lot of activities, and one of the things I did a lot of was environmental reviews on projects. I've looked at thousands of projects and gone through EIRs, environmental impact reports, and assessed what they said in the projects versus what I saw on the ground. I generally tried to do a win-win scenario if I could. I'm not anti-development. I'm not anti-anything necessarily, except maybe some of these programs. Anyway, I was looking to find answers for everyone, and I care. I went into resource management because I love the resources, and this has been dear to my heart. And what I'm watching is just killing me inside. I've taken that attitude, though, and said, you know what? We have to be positive about where we are. We have to be able to create the world out ahead of us, and we can only do that with positive energy. If we go negative, we're going to ruin it. So some of the things I'm going to tell you are a little different than what you heard just a little while ago, but not too different. Okay? The picture you're not seeing, well, you are seeing the picture. I guess they're not seeing it on the camera at this moment, but jet trails and dying trees. Well, I started with the dying trees and vegetation. And what I started noticing is that the trees were collapsing. They're losing their foliage. The canopies are really getting thin. A lot of dead and dying branch tips. The more you look at it, the more you can spot it. And the grove we're looking at right now, from left to right, you can see the dead trees, and you can see how thin the canopies are. And you can compare those to what you should be seeing in a healthy tree. This was a typical oak die-off through the California ranges. This is a mixture of live oak and blue oak. And this is a typical grove die-off. And you look at the one right in the middle, and it's practically dead. And then as you go through, you can see others in the grove that are getting thinner. They're losing their foliage. They have dead branch tips. They're losing their ability to produce. And once I got into the grove, I didn't find any trees that didn't have signs. And while some of those look healthy, they're really not. I was starting to get really concerned about what's going on. And I started taking a lot of samples. Well, this is a typical dying tree, and what happens when it either gets burned or frozen is that it'll kill off part of the tree, and then you'll get epicormal sprouting as the tree is trying to live, and it sprouts on the branches and on the trunks, and it's trying to recover. There's also a high thin cirrus haze everywhere I went, which has been a real change. And this particular event was in Northern California, where there's no SOD, in this case is sudden oak death, which is Phytophthora, which is a fungus. In fact, here are some examples. The typical sudden oak death invasion is shown on this laurel. And in fact, the volatile oil trees like eucalyptus and bay laurel tend to harbor the SOD pathogens. But that's typical. Then you look over at the madrone tree next to it, and they get big cankers on them. They start to collapse. When I ran into solar burning on vast areas of chaparral all through the North Coast, I took the samples in. They said, oh, it's insects or fungus. Well, insects and fungus don't attack healthy vegetation. These are in incredible stress when they get invaded. So you start looking at the spread of the fungus and the disease, and it has to be coming from environmental stress. And I started getting curious about, well, what environmental stresses are we looking at? I know that the UV has been going up, but there were a lot of questions I had about all that. I still do, because things are so confusing out there. There's a lot of outright fabrication. There are a lot of stories. There's some truth. And when you get right down to it, it's kind of hard to tell where we really are. And the redwood tree on the bottom right, that's rather typical of the sudden oak death on the redwoods. Well, then I started traveling, went into Arkansas. The picture in the background is a tree die-off in Arkansas. Went to Illinois, saw the same thing, New York, Montreal, Quebec. Every place I've been, I'm seeing exactly the same conditions. And it's not sudden oak death. It's different fungus, different insects, all under high stress. A report came out. In fact, this happened just before Rosalind and I went to the United Nations conference. This report came out from the Western Ecological Research Center of the U.S. Geologic Survey. And they're talking about tree death in the Sierra Nevada mountains, doubling since 1983. And the stress and diebacks have occurred from Alaska to Mexico. And since 1997, more than 200 million hectares or over 50 million acres have been affected. In the picture, if you look at it, this was from 35,000 feet looking down. We're right on top of the cloud layer, the haze layer. This is the high thin cirrus that's coming out of the jets. And it's drifting all the way to the ground, and it's probably creating the silver haze we're all seeing. At the same time, well, this actually was an earlier report from Charles Little, and Rosalind mentioned it, and basically saying America's trees are dying, and the cedars from Alaska to the palms of Florida, from the maples of Canada and New England to the pines and incense cedars of the Sierra Nevada, the incidence of death and decline are increasing at an alarming rate. This particular picture, I was with Rosalind along the coast south of Noyo Harbor in Mendocino County. I want to throw this in because one of the other things I do is I have a bioremediation company. Now, I'm not making these comments to make money. I started into the bioremediation business when I found out there were natural microbial species that we could treat the trees and the soils with that removed a lot of the problems. We've taken out copper, we've taken out some aluminum, we've taken out some mercury. We need a whole lot more research on it, but we have natural microbes out there. We have billions of natural microbes out there that we haven't even investigated. So why in the heck are we doing GMO? It makes no sense whatsoever unless there's some profit involved somewhere. Okay? It makes no sense at all. This was a successful sudden oak death treatment. We got contacted by the rancher and we went in. He wanted to try it. And so we went into the areas and he said, yeah, the university's been here. They identified the sudden oak death areas. And I said, well, show us to them. Show them to us. And he took us out and we treated all the trees that had SOD that they had identified from the university. We went back a year later and there was no SOD on those trees. Okay? So there are remedies. I want to put out some positive things with all of this, even though some of the rest of it is really bad. Went into Canada, there's another common problem. It's water problems. And we have cyanobacteria or blue-green algae blooms going on across the entire planet now. There are a lot of consequences to this. Well, as you see on this, the water supplies are in jeopardy, not only from drinking, but increases in disease, the loss of recreation. Now that's like killing Clear Lake. We're getting ready to do a project up there right now. Loss of recreational use. On this you can see dead shoreline trees. And I put chemtrail overcast, and I'll explain that in a minute, why I use that term, even though it's been considerably frowned on. The fact is, if you say anything at all about any of these creating the climate change, you're considered a conspiracy theorist. And so, yeah, I need that aluminum hat.